You know, it's a most curious thing that the moment you stop trying so terribly hard to find your way, the path seems to unfurl beneath your feet as naturally as breath leaving the body. We spend so much of our lives searching, hunting through the corridors of time as if somewhere, just around the bend, there lies a final answer that will solve the peculiar riddle of being alive. And yet, have you ever noticed that the harder you look, the more blind you become? The tighter you cling to the telescope, the less you see of the sky. It is almost as though life plays a delightful trick on us. Like a mischievous breeze, it teases the seeker, saying, "Come now, chase me if you must." And we run, of course. We run toward, meaning toward certainty, toward some imagined state of completion. But the more we pursue, the more life slips through the fingers like catching smoke with a butterfly net. You see, searching is a form of resistance, a subtle declaration that this moment, here and now, is insufficient. And when you believe the present is lacking, you begin to treat life as something you must earn, conquer, or decode. It becomes a problem, a puzzle, a series of obstacles to climb over rather than a dance to move with. But consider for a moment the traveler who stops in the middle of the forest. No map, no compass, no urgent desire to be anywhere but here. In that palsy, in that opening, the forest begins to speak not with words, but with direction. A faint path you hadn't noticed before. A clearing that seems to invite you, a sense of being gently carried rather than anxiously pushing. The path appears. Not because you fought for it, but because you became quiet enough to let it reveal itself. Think of life as an ocean. If you thrash in the water, trying desperately to stay afloat, you actually sink faster. But if you lie back, surrender your weight, the water holds you effortlessly. The ocean has no interest in drowning you. It only needs you to stop struggling long enough for buoyancy to work its charm. People misunderstand surrender. They think it means giving up, abandoning intention, losing direction. But surrender is not collapse. It is cooperation with what already is. It is aligning oneself with the natural current instead of insisting on swimming upstream in the name of progress or pride. Now, why do we search so relentlessly? Why do we believe the answers must be far off, hidden behind the next achievement, the next relationship, the next spiritual technique? Perhaps it is because we fear the simplicity of what's already here. The ego loves a quest. It wants to feel as though enlightenment is a trophy waiting on a distant mountaintop. It would rather be a heroic seeker than an ordinary presence. But life is not waiting on a mountaintop. It is here, in the breath you are taking right now. The great cosmic joke is at the present moment. The one thing we overlook is precisely the treasure we've ever been hunting. And when you stop insisting that life reveal its secrets on your terms, you start to hear them whispered on its terms. The rustle of a leaf, the rise and fall of your chest, the subtle sensation of simply being. This is where the path begins. But of course the mind protests. It says, surely it can't be so immediate, so unadorned. Surely the path to truth must be something grand, difficult, and hidden. And so we return to our search outward, always outward, as if the horizon might finally grant us an audience with certainty. Yet the horizon is an illusion. No matter how far you walk, it remains the same distance away. It is a reminder that meaning cannot be chased down like prey. It can only be recognized in the footprints you are making this very instant. Let me put it in another way. Have you ever sat by a river and watched the flow of water? You don't demand that the river reveal its destination. You don't scold it for taking the long way around a particular bend. You simply watch. The river's path is obvious only because you are not trying to control it. And in doing so, you become aware of its effortless intelligence, the way it moves around stones, the way it yields to obstacles without losing its direction. Life has that same intelligence. It knows how to move around the stones in your way. It knows how to curve, meander, and redirect without losing its essence. But when you try to force the river to move in straight lines or carve into it an artificial direction, you create turbulence, anxiety, confusion, the very suffering you hoped to escape. So the question becomes, can you watch your own experience the way you watch a river? Can you let thoughts, feelings, and events flow with their own timing and shape without demanding an answer from them? For most people, there is a terror in such letting go, a fear that if they loosen their grip, everything will fall apart. But the curious thing is this: most of what you regripping was never yours to control in the first place. And the things you can influence, your intention, your attention, your sincerity, do not require force. They unfold naturally, like a flower opening to the morning sun. When you stop searching, you do not become passive. You become receptive, and receptivity is a kind of strength far greater than effort. It is the strength of a sail rather than an engine. A sail captures the wind not by fighting it, but by aligning with its direction. And a small boat with a well-set sail can travel farther than the mightiest ship powered by strain. There is a subtle art to this, the art of relaxed awareness. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you squeeze too tightly, you harm it. But if your hands are too loose, it flies away. The right touch is neither control nor negligence, but a balanced presence. And this is how one must hold life: gently, attentively, without suffocating it with expectation. Many people come to me, you see, and they say, "What is my purpose? What is the right path for me?" And I often reply, the right path is the one you are already walking, but you are too busy looking at imagined paths to notice where your feet truly are. Purpose is not something you find. It is something you recognize. And recognition happens when the mind becomes still enough to see that every step has been part of the journey, even when it felt lost, even when it felt uncertain. The universe does not make mistakes in its choreography. It only waits for you to notice that you're already part of the dance. When you stop searching, even for a moment, you begin to sense the rhythm. The footsteps become lighter. The tension in the spine loosens. Events unfold without the usual commentary about how they ought to be. And slowly, very slowly at first, you begin to notice that life is carrying you, guiding you, revealing itself through the very experiences you once dismissed as random or inconvenient. The path appears, not because you demanded it to, but because you finally stopped walking with your eyes closed. Now, you may wonder, if the path reveals itself when we stop searching, what then becomes of desire, ambition, or passion? Are we meant to simply drift through life like fallen leaves carried on the wind? Not kichi, tunara mirta. You see, drifting is what happens when you abandon attention, but allowing is what happens when you abandon resistance. These are not the same. True intention arises from stillness. It is like a seed that knows precisely how to grow, but never strains to do so. In fact, if you watch a plant carefully, you'll see that its growth is both entirely effortless and entirely determined. The plant does not sit in the soil pondering whether it is worthwhile, nor does it grip the earth with anxiety. It participates in its own becoming simply by being what it is. In the same way, your deepest desires, not the frantic desires of fear or insecurity, but the quiet, enduring ones, unfold naturally when you stop interfering with them. They are the organic expressions of who you already are, not who you think you're supposed to become. But as long as you insist on searching for a path, you overlook the one that is growing beneath your very feet. You chase shadows, projections of what you imagine will bring fulfillment, and in so doing, you miss the extraordinary presence of what is here now. Consider the way clouds move across the sky. They never struggle to be in the right place. And yet, they form shapes, patterns, storms, and clearings with a kind of cosmic artistry. They drift and dance, but always with purpose. The purpose of being clouds. If they were to anxiously contemplate their next move, they would freeze in the sky, paralyzed by their own uncertainty. Humans suffer from precisely this paralysis. We think that purpose comes from knowing the future. Clouds know better. So what, then, is the invitation? It is to live with the same ease, the same trust in the natural unfolding of your own life, the same willingness to move without demanding absolute certainty. When you do this, a wonderful thing begins to happen. Your actions become more intelligent, not less. Your decisions become clearer, not more confused. The fog lifts, not because you force it to, but because you stop stirring it with constant analysis. There's a marvelous story, not of any particular culture, but of the human heart, about a man who walked through a vast desert searching for water. He spent years wandering, studying maps, reading the stars, consulting wise men, all in desperate pursuit of a hidden oasis. And one day, exhausted and disappointed, he sat down beneath a lonely tree and accepted that perhaps he would never find it. For the first time, he simply breathed. He felt the sand beneath him, the stillness waiting in the air, and in that stillness, he heard a faint sound. Dripping water, not far from where he rested. He had spent his life searching for the oasis everywhere except in the one place he never thought to look: the present moment. When we stop striving, we become sensitive. When we become sensitive, we begin to notice subtle things, the quiet intuitions, the natural inclinations, the gentle invitations life is always offering. These are the footprints of the path. You can only follow them when you stop running. What we often mistake for aimlessness is actually the beginning of wisdom, because wisdom does not shout. It whispers, it does not rush. It waits. And the moment you become still, even for a breath, you begin to hear it, the soft and ancient hum of your own being, reminding you that the way forward has always been here. Only your searching hid it from view. Now, once this sensitivity awakens, something even more curious unfolds. You begin to notice that life has been speaking to you all along, not in grand pronouncements, but in small, intimate gestures. A conversation overheard at just the right moment. A sudden pause in your routine that opens into clarity. A moment of confusion that later reveals itself as a hidden turning point. These are the quiet signposts on the path that appears, but to recognize them, you must be willing to stand in uncertainty without trying to escape it. And this is where many of us falter. We have been taught that uncertainty is dangerous, that not knowing somehow means we are failing at life. But uncertainty is simply space, the open sky in which new possibilities can land. When you cling to certainty, you trap yourself in repetition. When you allow uncertainty, you open yourself to discovery. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you are navigating through a dense fog. If you insist on waiting until the entire landscape is visible before you move, you will never take a single step. The fog does not lift all at once. It clears only as you proceed. You see just enough of the path to take one honest step forward, and then another, and another. Life reveals itself this way, gradually, intimately, in direct proportion to your willingness to walk without absolute assurance. And the remarkable thing is that the steps you take in this manner are far more aligned than the frantic leaps made while chasing certainty. You move not because you are escaping something, nor because you are grasping at an illusion, but because the step itself feels true. That is the essence of the path appearing. You begin to act from clarity rather than compulsion. Take, for instance, the way children explore the world. They wander without a plan. They follow whatever catches their attention. They touch, question, observe, and delight in the unpredictable. And somehow, through this seemingly aimless play, they learn more about the world in a few years than most adults learn in decades. Why? Because they have not yet been trained to mistrust their own curiosity. They are not searching for a path. They are allowing the path to lead them. And so every experience becomes meaningful. Every moment is alive. You see, meaning is not found by demanding that life answer your questions. Meaning emerges when you fall into rhythm with life itself. When you listen, when you feel. When you let go of the insistence that everything must serve some grand purpose. And then, paradoxically, purpose reveals itself. People often say, I'll trust life once I know where it's taking me. But that's like saying, I'll open my eyes once I'm sure the sun has risen. The trust comes first. The seeing follows. There's a deep, almost sacred intelligence in the simple act of waiting without rushing, moving without forcing, and noticing without demanding. This is the intelligence of the seasons, the tides, the pulse of your own breath. And when you fall into harmony with this intelligence, life stops feeling like a maze you must escape and begins to feel like a mystery you re-invited to explore. In that state, even your challenges become part of the path rather than obstacles to it. You begin to see that uncertainty, discomfort, and even loss have a role in shaping the direction of your life. They carve the valleys through which your river flows. For the river cannot reach the ocean if it refuses to bend. And so the path appears not by erasing the unknown, but by making peace with it, walking through it with eyes open, heart receptive, and steps And as you make peace with the unknown, something even more profound begins to unfold. You start to see that life is not happening to you, nor is it something you must conquer or control. Rather, it is something you are continuously co-creating with every breath, every thought, every moment of awareness. We tend to imagine life as a kind of script already written, with our task being to decode it correctly to find out what is expected of us. But life is less like a script and more like a piece of music played in real time. You don't discover the melody by reading ahead. You discover it by playing the next note with sincerity. And that note, the very next one, is always available in the present moment. The trouble is, most people are so fixated on the imagined future that they miss the music entirely. They are trying to conduct the orchestra before they've even learned how to listen. But when you listen, truly listen, you realize that the music has always been guiding you. It doesn't require effort, only attention. This is why the path appears when you stop searching, because you cannot hear guidance while shouting over it with your demands. Now think of your life as a vast tapestry. From up close, all you see are threads crossing back and forth in what looks like chaos. But if you step back, even slightly, a pattern begins to emerge. Not a rigid pattern, not one that was predetermined in every detail, but something organic, something alive. A pattern shaped by your choices, your experiences, your relationships, your very presence. When you stop insisting that the tapestry look a certain way, you begin to appreciate the beauty of its unfolding. The dark threads matter as much as the bright ones. The knots, the frayed sections, the unexpected colors, all of them belong. And here is the marvelous thing. When you stop fighting your own tapestry, life weaves itself with far more elegance. But let us return for a moment to the experience of searching. Notice how searching keeps you slightly ahead of your own life. Always leaning forward, always trying to reach the next moment before it arrives. Searching divides you. Part of you stands here, but your thoughts run into the future like anxious scouts, reporting back visions of what might go wrong. When you live like this, you are never truly present. You are always preparing to live, but never living. The moment you stop searching, this division dissolves. You return to yourself. You begin to inhabit your own skin again, to feel the ground beneath your feet, to recognize that you were never meant to live in the tension between now and later. This is why so many people feel tired without understanding why. It is exhausting to live ahead of your own life. It is like trying to breathe tomorrow's air. But when you stop, when you pause long enough to simply be, even if just for a breath, something inside you relaxes. Something softens. Something ancient within you remembers that you are not lost, have never been lost, cannot be lost. For how can you be lost when you are the path? Consider the way a dancer moves across a stage. The dancer is not thinking about the destination of each step. The dancer is the dance. The movement arises spontaneously, guided not by a map, but by the music and the body's own intelligence. And if you were to ask the dancer, "Where is the dance taking you?" the question would make no sense. The dance doesn't take you anywhere. The dance is the point. So too with life. The path does not exist so that you may arrive at some final destination where everything is perfectly explained and resolved. The path exists so that you may walk it moment by moment, breath by breath, with eyes open to the wonder of simply being here at all. When you stop searching for a destination, the journey becomes luminous. And as the journey becomes luminous, a transformation takes place not out in the world, but within the very texture of your awareness. You begin to notice that your relationship to life has shifted from tension to participation, from anticipation to presence. And presence, you see, is not a state you achieve. It is what remains when you stop trying to be somewhere else. Presence is the quiet recognition that this moment, just as it is, contains the entire universe folded into the experience of being. It is not static or rigid. It is alive, like a flame flickering in an unseen breeze. And the more you notice it, the more you begin to realize that searching was never a path to wisdom, it was a distraction from it. For wisdom does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives the way dawn arrives, slowly, softly, illuminating what was already there. You begin to sense that life has a certain benevolence, not the benevolence of granting wishes or protecting you from pain, but the deeper benevolence of inviting you into reality exactly as it is. This invitation is woven into every moment, into the smallest details, into the rise and fall of your breath. When you stop searching, you finally accept the invitation. And what does this acceptance look like? Not resignation, not passivity, but a kind of wholehearted participation. You become curious about what might unfold if you stop interfering long enough for life to show its cards. Curious about who you might become if you quit insisting on who you think you should be. Curious about what freedom might feel like if you unclench your fists around every expectation. Think, for a moment, of a bird perched on a branch. The bird is not concerned with having a map of the forest or a detailed itinerary of its next flight. It doesn't question whether the branch will break or whether the wind will support its wings. Its trust is not naive. It is intrinsic. It knows that flying is not a plan, it is its nature. In the same way, when you begin to trust your own unfolding, you find that many of the fears you thought were essential begin to dissolve. You recognize that the ground beneath you has always held you, even when you were convinced that you were falling. And you see that life has supported you through every moment you previously thought you wouldn't survive. This is where a profound stillness begins to emerge. Stillness not of inactivity, but of clarity. A stillness that allows you to respond rather than react, to choose rather than panic. A stillness that makes room for joy, even in the midst of uncertainty. And perhaps the most beautiful discovery of all is this. When you stop searching, you begin to encounter yourself. Not the self you present to the world, not the self constructed from the debris of other people's expectations, but the quiet, undisturbed self that has always been here waiting patiently beneath the noise. This self is not anxious. It is not striving. It is not lost. It is simply aware. Aware of the movement of thoughts, like clouds drifting across the sky, aware of emotions rising and falling, like waves returning to the shore, aware of the immeasurable depth of being alive in this fleeting, miraculous moment. This awareness is not something you earn. It is not something you build. It is revealed the moment you stop searching for it, as if it were somewhere else. And once you have tasted this awareness, even briefly, something shifts permanently. You no longer experience life as a puzzle waiting to be solved, but as a dance waiting to be joined. You begin to trust the rhythm, to sense the natural cadence of your existence, and to move in harmony with it. This is the path that appears, not a straight line, not a map, but a rhythm alive, unpredictable, and profoundly intimate. And when you finally surrender to that rhythm, you see that you were never chasing the path at all. You were chasing the illusion that you needed one. And so, when the illusion of needing a path dissolves, what remains is something far more intimate than any doctrine, philosophy, or spiritual roadmap could ever offer. What remains is direct contact with life itself, raw, unmediated, unfiltered. You are no longer standing at a distance from your own experience, trying to analyze it, manipulate it, or turn it into something useful. You are simply living it. This living is not ordinary. It is vibrant, textured, multi-dimensional. You begin to feel the subtle layers of existence that were previously drowned out by the noise of your searching. The way sunlight falls on a table becomes an entire universe. The sound of distant laughter becomes a kind of music. Even the moments you once labeled as inconvenient or dull begin to shimmer with a strange kind of presence. It is as if you have been looking at life through frosted glass for years, and suddenly someone wipes it clean. This clarity is not constant. It flickers, it ebbs and flows, just like everything in nature. But once you have seen it, you can never fully forget it. It becomes a quiet companion, a reminder that beneath the turbulence of thought lies a stillness that cannot be shaken. And from this stillness, your actions arise differently. They are no longer driven by the frantic need to secure a particular outcome. They arise the way a tree grows new leaves naturally, effortlessly, without consulting a 5-year plan. When you act from stillness, your actions have a certain quality to them. They are precise, even if they are spontaneous. They are sincere, even if they appear simple. They are aligned, even if they do not conform to what the world expects. This is what it means to walk the path that appears. You stop moving like a person trying to impress an imagined audience. You begin moving like water, responding to the shape of the world without losing your essence. And funny enough, people often interpret this as confidence. But it is not confidence in the usual sense. It is not bravado or certainty. It is something gentler, a quiet trust in the unfolding of life, and in your ability to meet each moment as it arrives. Trust, you see, is not built on guarantees. Trust is built on intimacy, the intimacy of having survived every moment you thought you couldn't. The intimacy of having discovered that clarity arises not from control but from openness. And the more intimate you become with your own experience, the more the world begins to open itself to you. Opportunities appear not because you chased them, but because your presence allows you to recognize them. Relationships deepen not because you tried to perfect yourself, but because authenticity is far more magnetic than performance. Creativity flows not because you forced inspiration, but because inspiration feels safe to land in a mind that is not cluttered with demands. This is the paradox at the heart of the whole thing. The less you seek, the more you find. The less you control, the more life aligns. The less you strive, the more you become yourself. And eventually, a moment ahivis, menos a quiet, almost imperceptible moment, when you realize that the path you were searching for was never ahead of you or behind you. It was not hidden in the future or buried in the past. It was not a secret the universe was withholding until you proved yourself worthy. The path was your own presence, unfolding step by step, moment by moment, in the simple act of being alive. When you truly see this, your entire relationship to life changes. You no longer treat it like a series of tests or challenges to overcome. You treat it as a conversation, a dance, a meeting between your awareness and the infinite complexity of the world. Every step becomes a discovery. Every breath becomes an arrival. Every moment becomes the path appearing anew.